What if some of our suffering isn't coming from the world? What if it's from how we so tightly grip our own certainty about the world?
Welcome to a special summer series edition of Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time with Clayton Platt. In this limited edition series, Clayton will be going through some of the core concepts of his new book, Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. This special summer series is brought to you by Meditation for Leadership.
Leadership happens in that space before the decision. That's the work of Meditation for Leadership, helping you pause under pressure, notice what's really happening, and choose how you respond instead of reacting. The foundation of effective leadership and superior employee performance. Ready to create that space? Visit meditationforleadership.org. Welcome back to Magic in the Moment. Last week, we talked about why we need each other, about connection and belonging. And this week, I want to talk about something just a little different from that. And that is what happens when we let go of what we think we already know. All right, so think about this. When was the last time you walked into a situation, a conversation, a new project, a new relationship, and you were completely sure you knew how it was going to go? Right? Well, how often were you actually right? Today, we're going to talk about some of what's in chapter 4 of the book, Magic in the Moment. And this is the beauty of the beginner's mind. And I'm going to share with you a time my own confidence in already knowing got thoroughly, hilariously dismantled by a 10-week-old puppy. A few years ago, just at the end of COVID, my wife and I brought home a puppy, Brody. And here's the thing. It had been quite a number of years since we had even had a dog in our house. It's been 8 years. Before that, we had a beagle who we rescued, and we had him for 20 years. This should have been the easiest possible setup for bringing a true beginner's mind to something, because it was almost by definition a brand new experience. When we rescued the beagle, he was already 1 year old. So I didn't have this experience, except, well, it wasn't quite as simple as that. Because what I didn't account for was this. I'd spent plenty of time recent to bringing home our puppy Brody, with our daughter's dog, Rusty, who she and our daughter and Rusty had spent a year with us during COVID. And, you know, Rusty was a couple years older than Brody. And somewhere in my mind, without even noticing that it was happening, I built up this quiet, confident sense that I basically knew how puppies worked. Their cries, the routines, the rhythms. But the fact was, I didn't know how puppies worked. Every single cry needed to be figured out fresh, in the moment, on its own terms. Was this the, I need to go outside cry, or the, I'm hungry cry, or I'm simply unhappy with the general state of the universe cry? My so-called experience turned out to be almost useless. I had to actually pay attention, really pay attention to this particular brand new little creature instead of running on autopilot from what I thought I already knew. Here's the irony that really got me. We had received excellent instructions, written guidance from the breeder, a real coaching from our daughter, and all of it was really helpful. But none of it was the same as exactly going through it. It's a little bit like reading a parenting book, like What to Expect When You're Expecting, cover to cover, and discovering, well, it really still doesn't totally prepare you for a 2 a.m. wake up with an actual infant. The information helps. It's not the same as experience. Okay, so there was this other layer underneath it too that I really didn't expect. some quiet voice in the back of my head saying, well, you're not exactly new at life. You've been around the block. This isn't your first rodeo, which it turns out is precisely the trap, because all of that accumulated life experience can make it harder and not easier to actually be present with something that is genuinely new. Because what happens is we're importing our whole history into situations that actually deserve a fresh look. Old dog, new tricks. Yeah, I get it. There's a wonderful phrase from a Korean Zen master that's at the heart of this chapter, and it is, don't know mind. The invitation is to actually value not knowing, to treat it as rich territory instead of some deficiency that we need to cover up. And honestly, most of us do the complete opposite. We have this deep inherent trust in what we already know. We have it so completely that it becomes this kind of armor. And leaders really fall into this constantly. And I've seen this in coaching and training. And there's even a name for it. It's called the expert syndrome. And this is where the very expertise that got you somewhere becomes the exact thing that stops you from learning anything new once you've arrived. There's a story that I love that I include in this chapter of the book. And Jack Kornfield's teacher, Ajahn Chah, used to say to him, you have so many opinions and you suffer so much from them. Why not let them go? We live in a culture where having strong opinions and having them fast is treated almost like a virtue. Shared opinions are how we sort out who's in our camp and who isn't. And it's the easy way to navigate a complicated world. But Ajahn Chah's question points to somewhere else entirely. What if some of our suffering isn't coming from the world? What if it's from how we so tightly grip our own certainty about the world? And here's the gift that's inside new situations, though, and it's something I really felt with Brody. When you're in something entirely new, unfamiliar, it becomes a kind of mirror. You find out how you actually respond to uncertainty, not how you imagine you'd respond, not the story you tell yourself, but the real-time, unfiltered version. And that's incredibly valuable information. And you don't get it any other way. Here's where it gets really relevant to daily life, beyond puppies and new projects. If you think about it, we're constantly making these snap decisions based on incomplete information. Most of the time, we don't even notice we're doing it. The brain is wired to move fast. And let's tip our hat to the late, great Danny Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics for his work on behavioral finance, right? And he talks about system 1 and system 2 in the brain. System 1 is moving really, really fast and it makes 95% of the decisions and guides us through daily life. Whereas the other part, the slower part, the more rational part, system 2, is what we really need to make our most important decisions. And so this brain, it's wired to move really fast, to take whatever data is on hand and to reach a conclusion. But for most of human history, speed kept us safe. On the savannah, taking our time to kind of think through strategies probably would be a death knell. So I want you to do this, if you could. Think about a time when you formed a pretty firm impression of someone early on. Could be a coworker, a new neighbor, someone you met once at a gathering, and then weeks or months later, you learned something about their situation that completely shifted how you saw them. Maybe they'd been dealing with something hard that you had no idea about. And maybe the context you were missing changed everything. And that gap between the snap judgment and the fuller picture And that's where so much of our friction with other people actually lives. Think about that. And here's something else interesting. When new information conflicts with a belief we already hold, it creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. It's genuinely uncomfortable on a physical level to hold two conflicting truths at once. So our minds often take the easy way out and we just dismiss the new information rather than to sit with the discomfort of updating our view. Our mindfulness practice is actually really useful here because it trains us to notice that discomfort in our body, that little internal bell going off. And it trains us to do that before it hardens into some final judgment that we've stopped questioning. So what's the practical version of all this? A couple of simple questions, and I can think they're some of the most underused tools in everyday conversation. 1, what am I missing? 2, can you tell me more about that? That's it. That's most of the practice right there. Staying in the question just a little longer before you move to the answer. There's a quote in this chapter of the book that I took from the naturalist Rachel Carson, and I think about this a lot. She wrote about a child's sense of wonder, how fresh and beautiful the world looks before we've decided we already understand it, and how it's almost a kind of misfortune that most of us lose that clear-eyed vision somewhere along the way to adulthood. So don't know mind is in some ways just an invitation to get a little bit of that back. I want to invite you to bring to mind something in your life right now, a relationship, a project, a reoccurring conversation where you're pretty confident you already know what's going on. Give that some thought. Just notice that confidence. Where does it come from? How much of it is actually based on this specific situation right now? And how much of it is really just pattern matching from the past? Okay, now ask yourself this question. If I were encountering this for the very first time, no history, no assumptions, what would I want to ask? What would I want to notice that I might be skipping past? You don't have to act on this dramatically. Just pick one moment today, one conversation, one small, insignificant decision. You're going to consciously hold off on the conclusion just a little longer than usual. You're going to stay curious for just one extra beat. See what you notice. In case you're wondering, there is more of the Brody saga in the chapter. A few more puppy mishaps that didn't make it into today's episode. I'm just saving them for you. Along with that, there's a fuller look at cognitive dissonance and a set of reflection questions I really think are worth sitting with on your own time. That's all in Chapter 4 of Magic in the Moment. Next week, we are going to move on to a chapter called Self-Care is Job 1. And that's exactly what it sounds like, and probably exactly what most of us need to hear. So until then, thank you so much for staying curious with me today. The magic is already here. Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give a big shout out to John Gehring of Story Trust Media for his expert editing and wonderful production guidance. I also am deeply grateful for the ongoing support I receive from Meditation for Leadership and their sponsorship. So that's all for now. Until next time, this is Clayton Platt saying, watch for those moments of magic when mindfulness shows up in real time in your life.